Welcome to Learning to Glow, a show about wellness, skin health, and self-development. I'm your host, Jess. I'm a mom, entrepreneur, and skincare expert. I'm so excited to share tips on how to achieve healthy skin and bring amazing guests in the field of health, fitness, aging gracefully, and personal growth. Let's explore all different ways we can take care of ourselves as women, both inside and out, to truly shine. So let's get glowing. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I am sharing a solo episode with you all, and I mentioned it last week, but our family had a really wonderful trip to Europe, and I wanted to share more about this. I got a lot of questions, actually, and so I'm doing a little Q&A, answering some questions, sharing some of my observations when it comes to wellness, when it comes to food, which is like some of the most fun things to talk about when it comes to Europe, especially as an American. I love talking about the differences between how we do things and how they do things. And I'm sharing what we did in my itinerary as well. One of the biggest takeaways, like I mentioned, is the food quality, the difference there versus here. And so I talk about that a little bit, but if there is anything that you are interested in, if you're interested in taking a trip or you have a trip coming up and you have any questions, let me know. I love talking about it. I have been reminiscing about my trip ever since we got back. It was something that we had saved and planned for years. And so I'm just so grateful that it was able to become realized and like that it was as fun as it was and that we had such a great time. So I'm definitely excited to share it with you. Thank you for listening. Share this with somebody if you know if they're taking a trip. There are some good tips from my latest experience. This was our fourth time in Europe. I haven't been in so many years, so it was like so much fun to be back and to bring the kids. This was a very fun family trip as well. So thank you again for listening and enjoy this episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Learning to Glow. And I am here with a solo episode today. I wanted to share my experiences in Europe from a health and wellness perspective and just share some of the takeaways that I had in Europe. And we went to Europe in the beginning of June, and I've had some time to reflect on it, and I've had a lot of questions, actually. So I'm going to do a little Q&A at the end as well. I was in 3 different countries. I'm going to share where I went and what I did and answer some questions because it was a trip of a lifetime. So I'm so excited to share more about my trip because I haven't really had a chance to talk about it yet. It takes time to readjust after you take such a big trip, but I just observed so many things from like a health perspective. I am so excited to share more about this trip and my takeaways and hopefully answer some of the questions that you might have about if you are interested in doing a Europe trip yourself. First, I'll talk about like what we did, where we went. We started our trip in Amsterdam and then we went to Ghent, Belgium, and we finished our trip. Since 2007, my husband and I actually got engaged in Paris. So I was really excited to go back and experience it again. And this time as a family of 4. So my 2 boys, my husband and I. And we began our trip in Amsterdam. We left like right after school got out in the beginning of June. We spent about 4 nights in Amsterdam. Then we took a train to Brussels and connected to Ghent, where we stayed for 3 nights. And then we took the train to Paris and we finished out our trip there for 4 nights. I love this itinerary. I had never been to more than one country. Well, that's not true. I've only done that one other time. But normally when I have been to Europe in the past, I just kind of go to one country and try to really get to know it and spend a good amount of time there. And then I don't do like a bunch of different trips, and I don't like having to pack and unpack so often. And you want to get to know the place that you're staying at and have some leisure time. So I had never done multiple countries before, except for the one time after college when I spent a month in Europe, and I still only went to 2 countries. When you are in a place like we were, it's so easy to connect to different countries. So we thought, why not? Let's make this a trip where we take the train and see more than one place. So, one thing about the trip that I thought was amazing is how easy it was to get to the other countries with. We did something called the Eurostar that you take from country to country. And I love that experience. It was very easy to manage and it was quick. It was about an hour and a half from Amsterdam to Belgium, and then about 2 hours to get from Belgium to Paris. And the Eurostar was really, really nice. We actually ate on the train. It was like an airplane service. It was really great. It was a really nice experience between countries. So that's where we went. We started in Amsterdam, and what I noticed, and if you've been to Amsterdam, you'll notice this, people are so active and healthy. Everyone is biking. I think it's the number one most biked city in the world. So that's something that you have to look out for so you don't get run over or irritate them. And but beyond that, there's everybody's walking, everybody's running. We stayed next to this place called Vondel Park, and it's this big, beautiful green space in the city. And everybody's running and jogging. And like, I just noticed that it looked like a very healthy place to live. Even when it rained, there was a rainy day, everybody was still on their bikes, and little kids were in these little trailers behind the bikes or in front of the bikes. And it was just a very active place. Like I could see a lot of people eating very actively. As far as the food goes in Amsterdam, I also felt like it was pretty healthy. There was some like authentic Dutch food that we had that was really good. We tried like all of the fun things that are unique and special to Amsterdam, like bitterballen. And then we had these things called stroopwafels. Some of it wasn't super healthy, but the one thing that I love about all three places that we went, and that all of the cities that I've visited in Europe, is just the way that people are so leisure about their meals, and they're drawn out and people are enjoying, and there's cafes on all the corners. And I think that's one of my favorite things about Europe. It's no secret. I love to eat. I love to try new foods. I love French food. I loved actually all of the places that we went had amazing food, like all the things that I love. There was a ton of French fries, which I love. But one thing that I just appreciate about that European lifestyle of most of the European countries and cities that I've been to is the way that they take their meals. And it's just such a nice experience. It's so different here. I guess this is a good place to talk about the quality of the food. I sometimes have reactions here. I sometimes get bloated here. I get stomach aches here in America, but in Europe, I didn't have that experience. We all felt really good. There was nothing that we ate that made us feel uneasy or like had, no stomach pain or anything like that, no bloating. Maybe my stomach was sticking out because I ate so much, because I ate whatever I wanted and I wanted to experience everything. So I had no limitations on what I wanted to try or how much I wanted to eat. But the funny thing is that we would eat big meals and then we would walk everywhere. You walk so much more, especially in these cities where it's so easy and things are centralized. But I just didn't feel any negative repercussions from eating anything I wanted. So, and this is a well-known fact, a lot of people talk about this. When you go to Europe, people who can't eat wheat can eat wheat in Europe because they have different regulations than we have here. They have cleaner restrictions on what you can put in the food. There was one day where we went somewhere to get a milkshake, and my son was like, "Oh, I think they made a mistake because I ordered a strawberry milkshake." And he had a sip of it and it was strawberry milkshake, but it wasn't colored. It didn't have any pink to it. So he just assumed that, oh, it's probably the wrong order, whereas they just don't use those dyes, and we do here. So it's one of my favorite things about Europe is the food and the way that they really help their communities, their people, by regulating what goes into the food that they eat, because it's an important part of their culture. And especially in Paris and France, it's like they are foodies. It's like the food capital, the culinary capital of the world. And they're very into their food, but also the government helps protect the people for what goes into those things and what companies are allowed to get away with. Even the American McDonald's here has different ingredients there. So we have the capability in America to have the same type of food as Europe because they're doing it, but we're just not being forced to here. So that was so fun to be able to eat things and not have any pain or stomach bloating or anything like that because the food is just a lot cleaner. And if you've been, you know what I'm talking about. One thing that I think is funny, and I see a lot of funny memes about this online when it comes to like food or drinks in Europe, is ice. I've talked about this so many times on the podcast. I love ice. I try to limit it. I've come a long way. I've had so many acupuncturists come on my show that are like, please stop drinking ice drinks, things that are too cold. It's not good for your digestion. It's not good for your chi. And yet I don't drink ice water, but I do still drink iced coffee. And that is not something that is readily available in the countries that I went to. There, you can get like some places will give you an iced Americano. There's not a lot of drip coffee, I notice. Like, I just like a cup of Joe sometimes. I just want a cup of coffee over ice. And that wasn't something that they had a lot of, especially in Amsterdam and Belgium. I mean, even Paris. Like, I didn't see a lot of just iced coffees or just coffee in general. It was like espressos and espresso drinks, which is fine. But I like a iced coffee. So sometimes I would say, okay, can I get a side of ice? I would say 50-50. Sometimes I would get it, sometimes I wouldn't. Or one time I got 4 ice cubes and they were small ice cubes. So I would try to make my own iced coffee. And then I just was like, forget it. I'll just drink what, everybody else is drinking. I'm not going to try to be special here. But I think it is funny how when you go to Europe, in most countries that I've been to anyway, especially Western Europe, it's difficult to get a lot of ice. And, I'm like, that's probably for the best. I mean, it's better for your health. You go in the summer, though, it's warm. And people make fun of that as well. Like the AC is just not as prevalent in certain places. We had no issues in our hotel. Every single hotel we stayed at had amazing AC. A lot of the places that we went to had AC, which is another reason I really recommend. I mean, I honestly don't like going anywhere in Europe in the summer. I only do it because, we have kids that are in school. So the closer you can get to like when the kids get out of school, the better when you're going to Europe. I think we left on the 7th of June. And a lot of the Europeans children are not out yet for summer break. So I feel like the front part of June is an easier, less expensive, less crowded. But I think at this time, just Europe is just very, very crowded. So anything that we did was crowded. I do think that it would have been worse. And I refuse to go to Europe in July or August. I've been twice in those months and it's just a lot hotter, a lot more crowded. And I think since COVID, post-COVID, travel is just so much more busy and there's so many more people. I don't know. This is my gut, but like, I think when people were forced to stay home, they were just like, I'm never going to have to do this again. I'm getting out there. I'm traveling because our national parks are so much crazier. Like everything's so much busier when it comes to travel, which is great. Like we want to see the world and everything, but it is a tough time to do it when you get to these hotter, busier months. We actually wanted to go to Italy for our trip. This Europe trip has been something that we've been planning and saving for years and years. It's been something that we really have been wanting, but it's expensive and we just didn't know the right time. And when we finally decided to go this year, it was like, okay, I really want to go back to Italy. I'm Italian. I've been there before. I want to show my husband. I want to show my kids. But they are having the Jubilee this year, 2025. And I just knew it was going to be like at least twice as crowded. And it's already so crazy there. So that's when we came up with this other alternative itinerary. And I was just the one thing that I was like, okay, if we're going to have to do it in summer, let's do it in the front part of June. So I do highly recommend, if you can, go as soon as possible if you have to go in the summer. When we left Paris, I feel like all hell broke loose. Like our timing was so lucky. I was so grateful we were back when we were, because the weather was warm, definitely warmer than my preference, but it wasn't crazy. It was in the high 80s. And when we got home, there was like a music festival with some dangerous things happening. Then the next day after that, Disneyland Paris was closed, which was like something that we actually did in France. And then there was major flooding because they have crazy rainstorms in the summer. And then went to a crazy heat wave where even they had to shut down the Eiffel Tower. They wouldn't let people up there, which is like super rare. I don't think that has happened. And then there was a major airline strike. So there was like 40,000 flights that were canceled, and the trains were striking too. So I was so grateful that we went when we did. We had such a smooth trip. It was like everything was literally perfect, smooth, no delays, no mishaps, which is when you have 3 different hotels to check in, train rides, plane rides, like kids, I was just like, oh, thank goodness. Like everything was really, really smooth. So that is one tip that I have. If you plan on going to Europe, try to get your trips in as soon as you can and book a place with AC. I actually went to Greece in 2001, and I was like fresh out of college, and we were poor. So we just booked cheap rooms, and we decided no AC, who cares? We'll save so much money. And it was hell, literal hell. I mean, I've never been so hot in my entire life. You couldn't sleep. Europe it can be done in different ways. I've done it on the super cheap, and this was definitely a more expensive trip. But I was like, if we're going to do this, I'm like, what's that White Lotus saying? At this age, I'm not meant to live an uncomfortable life. Like, I need AC. I think one thing that we really wanted with our hotels, one thing that we were kind of more mindful of and we were willing to spend a little bit more on is location, because that way we can just walk to places so much more easily and not have to worry about like public transportation as much. And public transportation there is seamless. Like it's pretty easy. Like everyone speaks English where we were. So a lot of the train stations, it's in English too. Like it was easy. But it was also nice to just be able to walk out your front door and be like, okay, there's a cafe we can eat at. We don't have to go super far. We don't have to get a taxi or whatever. Now I'm going to do a Q&A because I did get a lot of questions when I got back, and I want to share some of these things with you guys. So one of the questions that I got like a lot was, what was your favorite place that you visited on this trip? It's so funny because Paris is always going to be very special to me. I love the Paris scene. I love the cafes. My husband and I were engaged there. Like, it's just a very special place to me. I was just like, before I ever went to Paris, I was just like obsessed with it. I just think it's one of my favorite places. And so that'll probably always be my favorite. I think the city that delighted me and surprised me the most was Belgium, and Ghent, Belgium. Ghent was like you're walking down a movie set almost, like if you're an American, because nothing is that old here. It was like the most charming, beautiful, picturesque, like Gothic architecture, cobblestone streets, canals with rivers flowing through it all around. It just was so amazing. I cannot tell you how much I loved it. And that's, I knew it was going to be good. I did a ton of research on this trip. So I knew what to expect. We stayed at I feel like the most perfect place. It was actually a Marriott property. If anyone ever wants to go to Ghent, I cannot recommend this hotel enough. It was on the river, and it was right in the city center. So you walk out the hotel and there's the city right there. It's like this river. There's restaurants all along the canals. People are out. They're just, by the way, I'll talk about jet lag in a minute, but the sun was setting past 10. It was like 10:30. So you would go out at night and have dinner and then come back, and there's just everybody sitting along the river. People are playing music. They're having drinks. Some people are just making their own picnics. Some people are sitting in cafes. And it's just like every time I walked outside, my mouth dropped open. I was just like, this is what I pictured when I picture going to Europe and experiencing Europe. I was just so in awe that like the facades of the buildings were just incredible. The people at the hotel were incredible. The location, like, just you cannot beat it. And it feels so small, like it's such a little small city that, especially like where we were staying, it just felt really small. Like you could walk everywhere. There was no need, like we were 5 minutes from a castle that was like 1,000 years old. You just walk around the corner and there's this castle, and it's a museum now, so you can go in and look at it. And we spent a day doing all the cathedrals and the castle, and it was literally like 20 minutes was the farthest place we had to walk from our hotel. Incredible. That was so much fun. And then we got to do a river cruise and see the city from the water, which was awesome. So I was very delighted by the country of Belgium. The city that we went to for a day trip is called Bruges. I knew I wanted to go to Bruges when I saw the movie In Bruges, like, I don't know what year that was, maybe the early 2000s. It was one of my favorite days of my whole trip. We took the train from Ghent to Bruges. It was like 20 minutes, so close. Walked into the town, had lunch, saw all the museums that we wanted to see. It had the same feel as Ghent. My favorite river cruise, because we did a river cruise in Amsterdam too, was in Bruges. It was like, I mean, I can't tell you how beautiful it was. It was so much fun. It was so beautiful. The kids absolutely loved it. And that was definitely worth that little day trip, because there's not like a ton of things that you need to do in Ghent. But like what we did, I feel like we got the most out of it. And I felt like 3 days was plenty, even with doing that day trip to Bruges. So, but Amsterdam we loved too. We were very jet lagged. So speaking of jet lag, I don't remember being this jet lagged when I went to Europe before. And I know that I'm a lot older than when I went before. So I don't know if that has something to do with it. But I definitely know that not sleeping on the plane is not helpful. We took a plane, I think we left at like 2 p.m. LA time, and we got to Amsterdam the next day at their time, 9 a.m. And so no one slept. And we just like, we're like, okay, the room's not ready, so let's just hit the town. And we saw a museum and we did a canal tour. We did some stuff, but it was a little brutal, to be honest. Like not having sleep and then being jet lagged and being up late and just kind of forcing ourselves to get up early just so we could try to get on their time and acclimate. But it took a while. It took days for us to like feel normal, but we were staying up pretty late, sleeping in longer than we normally ever would at home, and trying to have a balance of like, I want to get rest because I want to enjoy my trip, but also we're in Europe. We don't want to sleep all day and like miss out on everything. So it was a fine line. There were definitely days where I was like, oh my God, I'm so tired. And when I got back, I thought I'd be fine. Like I just assumed I'd be fine. I was not. We left at 3:30, I think, Paris time, and got back here around, I think it was like 6:30 LA time. And so again, no one slept. I want to be rich just so I can lay down flat in first class when I go to Europe. Like that's it. That's the only reason. Because I cannot sleep sitting up, and I don't like to fly anyways. But even my family didn't sleep. So we all kind of struggled, and we all stayed up and just watched a bunch of movies. But the next day, and I would say it took me a good week to feel normal and get back on track. It was definitely longer than I thought it would have been. So people say for jet lag, get on the time that you're at and the time zone that you're at right away. Go outside and walk. Try to get the sunlight in your eyes so your body knows where the heck it is. And I feel like I did a lot of those things, but I still struggled. So I definitely am glad I gave myself some time. I didn't rush back into too many things just because it was a struggle. So if you're going, like, planning for that is important. So another question I got was, especially because we went to Paris, were people rude? I'll start with Amsterdam. I don't think I've ever been to a place with more friendly people. Everyone was so incredibly nice. We took KLM to Amsterdam, the airline, and the flight attendants were like the nicest flight attendants I had ever experienced. Everybody was so sweet, so helpful. Just the people of the Netherlands that we encountered, I can't believe how nice they were. In Belgium, same thing, like really, really positive experience. If we had questions, if we needed directions, like if anything was needed, people were so willing and nice to help. They were definitely willing to help out. I've heard so many people say that they have bad experiences in Paris. They did not like the people. They thought that people were really rude. Again, I see where you're coming from. I see where people are coming from. I don't think that the people are like, I mean, obviously you can't generalize a country and a city of people, but I just didn't have that experience. I felt like the people that I encountered in Paris were very friendly. Maybe not warm and fuzzy, maybe not as warm and fuzzy, or I don't know. I don't know what else, what other way to say it, as the people of the other two countries, but I mean, some of them were. And I think the biggest tip for me is I'm just very respectful. If I walk into a store or walk into a cafe, I would always say hi in French. Like I would always say bonjour. Uh, if it was nighttime, I'd say bonsoir. I mean, I didn't say it well. I just made an effort, and I think that's very important to them. I heard somebody speaking about this that lives in Paris, and she was like, people in the French people like have a way of doing things that they like, and there's an order to it. And when you come in and you don't respect that or you're rude about it, they don't like that. And so I think to them, it's very rude if you start talking to somebody without saying hello first. Or if you walk into a store or a cafe and you don't say that, that bugs them. And so that might put a bad taste in their mouth. I did talk to this one lady in a purse store. I was shopping and it was just her and I. And, she was nice. We just started talking and she was asking me how my trip was, and I was like, yeah, for some reason it came up that I'm like, yeah, there are people who say that the Parisians or the French people are just don't like Americans. And I said, that hasn't been the case for me. Like, they might not like me, but they've been nice to me. And she just said, we don't hate Americans. She was really nice about it. She was like, we don't hate Americans. I think she said, we do hate your president. That was one thing that she said. But I think, and I've seen this as an American, I didn't see it this trip, but in past trips, especially when I was younger and I was hanging out with the people that were, in younger crowds, we'd go out to bars or clubs. There were Americans that were rude. They were acting obnoxious. They were giving like a bad name to Americans. And so people would judge and like be annoyed. But I think that's just like, it's a person thing, if you're respectful and you may not always have the perfect experience. Like I just expect that maybe somebody might be rude to me, and I'm a tourist. Like they might be annoyed with me, and I wouldn't take that personal. There was one day where we went to get a crepe, and the man was great. He was so busy. There was this huge line, but we did something that he didn't like. And we didn't know because he told us like, oh no, you should have done it like this. And instead of being like offended, we were just like, oh, okay, sorry. Now we know. Thanks for telling us. It doesn't bother me, but there's so many tourists everywhere. And I know it's a big problem in Europe right now. There are people who are very, very frustrated, the citizens of certain countries and cities, because the tourism is driving up their costs and it's making it unaffordable for them, and they're annoyed. And I understand it. And when we were in Paris, there was a strike at the Louvre, and I found out why, and I was like, no wonder they're striking. It wasn't because they just want more money. It was because instead of, they have a cap of 20,000 people should come daily to see the Louvre, and 30,000 people have been coming in. So the people who work at the Louvre are like, listen, this is not safe for me and the workers, it's not safe for the guests, the tourists. So they just shut it down one day. And I know a lot of countries, especially France, they are notorious for striking until they get change. So, I understood it. I was like, I get it. That's a safety issue. That's a safety concern. So why not strike? That's great. There was also a strike at the catacombs. So we didn't get to see those, which I was sad that the kids couldn't see the catacombs in Paris. And there was a strike in Belgium with their intercountry trains, but nothing really affected us too much. We were really lucky, but there are just so many more tourists. And so I think being polite, being respectful, and being courteous, because it's probably super annoying for the people who live there to have so many tourists come in. I just think it's disruptive. And when you see, like, I remember just going to the Notre Dame in Paris and we had to wait in line just to get in. It never was like that before. When I went last time, you just walk right in. It's no big deal. But things are different. There is a lot more people trying to get into these places. And so, I mean, as an American, like, my advice and my tip is just be as kind as possible, be patient, and be understanding of what they're going through as people who live in this place that's so busy, so crowded. The long answer to me, no, I did not feel like the people were rude. I actually, one day I went to get my hair done. I went to get a blowout, which was a really fun thing for me because I did not want to bring all of my hair products and blow dryer. I didn't want to bring all of that. I didn't have room for any of that. So I thought I'll just get my hair washed and blown out when I get there. And I don't think I've ever met a nicer person as my hairstylist in Paris. She was so nice. And that was one thing that intimidated me. I'm like, oh gosh, a hair salon in Paris, like, they might be rude to me, or that might be an intimidating setting. And that was like so opposite of what I thought it would be. They were so kind, so nice. I even took a picture with the person that did my hair because we connected so much, even though we could barely understand each other because she didn't speak great English and I can't speak French. And back to, like, when I left for this trip, as far as my health goes and my fat loss journey, I was in a good place. Like, I was really getting on a routine. I was really close to my goal weight. And I would say that I did really well in Europe as far as just letting myself enjoy. I was very intuitively eating. I didn't overeat. I didn't undereat. If I wanted something, I would try it. But because of the way I had been eating before we left, I didn't have a bunch of croissants for breakfast. You know what I mean? Like, it was pretty much like I kind of was eating the way I eat here, but with extra goodies or like whatever. I literally wanted to try everything that they had in the places that we went that was special to those places. So I had whatever I wanted. I did zero strength training. I did bring protein. So most days I had at least one scoop of protein powder in my coffee or with breakfast or whatever. And then we walked a lot. My walking before this trip was great training, but it wasn't crazy. I never walked 30,000 steps. I think the most we walked was like 24,000 steps, which is a lot, obviously. I think that was the day we went to Disneyland in Paris. But there were other days where I was like 13,000 steps. Like, it wasn't out of control. And I was also trying to be very mindful because I didn't want the kids to feel overwhelmed by all the walking, especially my younger son. He doesn't want to walk all day long. He's not a big walker and he's got shorter legs than we do. So I tried to make it so we didn't overdo it. And we had plenty of downtime and relaxation time too. So it was fun and not just like checking a bunch of things off the list the whole time. But we did walk. We did walk quite a bit. And I think the hardest part for me was coming back. I had a hard time kind of getting back into my routine. I was so exhausted. Like, I tried to work out like right away and get back into the way I was doing things. And I think I overdid it. I was so sore. I was so exhausted. Getting back into my meal prepping and healthy eating at home has been difficult for me. I'm just like, in Europe, I ate whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And it didn't affect me there. But I've gained weight since I've gotten home. Not in Europe, but since I got here. So it's a small amount, but it's also like, dang, like what happened? So I don't know if that has happened to anyone else where it's like it's hard to get back on track once you're back from a trip. But it definitely has happened to me. And now after being home a couple weeks, I am starting fresh of like, okay, it's time to regroup and get back to where I was in my routine because to be honest, I haven't felt great. And we just got off like 4th of July holiday. So again, eating things that I normally wouldn't be, doing a few different days of barbecues at friends' house, so chips that I wouldn't eat normally that I wouldn't have at home, and just staying up later than normal. Things that I know don't make me feel great. So that's something that I am looking forward to kind of reining back in. Just so, my goal, and I've talked about this, is always how can I make myself get to a state where I feel better, I have more energy, because it's not been great since I've gotten back. But all in all, it was, I think, a trip of a lifetime. I think our kids will always remember. I will never forget it. I still think about it every day since I've been back because it was just so special. The things that we did and the things that we saw, we just had such a good time. And, there are times where you're like, okay, this is definitely not a vacation in the vacation terms of the word. It's more of a trip. You're working. I was like, we were doing laundry in the sink. We were trying to catch trains. One day we went from the train station and we walked to our hotel because we couldn't find a taxi. And that day was like 90 degrees and we were all like melting down by the time we got to our hotel. So there's like a lot of those moments, but overall, what I remember and the experience that we had that was so positive, it was just so amazing. And so if you ever have a chance to see those countries, there's so many things to do that are special within each country, but also knowing that a day of just walking around and having some food and taking a river cruise, not having to worry about seeing every little thing that the city has, because that's impossible. I think in the past when I went to Europe, I would be like, we have to do 10 things in a day because who knows when we're going to be back. I kind of had a different attitude about it this time. I'm like, we'll do the most important things, and whatever else we do on top of that is just like extra bonus. But I'd rather give up, a museum to not get to a point where we're not having fun anymore because we're just trying to check things off the list and we're walking so much and we're not enjoying just strolling through the city, which we got to do a lot in Paris, which was so fun. And it's so different than where I live. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I'm so happy that I got to share a little bit of my trip with you. If there's any questions that you guys have, there is a text function. I want to mention this because I've had a few texts on the podcast. I am not able to text you back. So if there's something that you want to tell me and share with me, that's a great place to do it. But if you want, please send me a message on Instagram. I'm at Simply Jess Skincare. You can follow me there. And there's a place where you can send messages. So do it there so that I can actually get back to you, because now I forgot the question that somebody had asked me and I wasn't able to get back to her. So if you sent me a text and you haven't heard back from me, that is why I am not able to text back or email back, but I am able to answer my DMs. And I'm so excited for the rest of summer. I hope you guys enjoy your summer. Hope you've been enjoying it so far. And I will see you all on the next episode. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please subscribe and review so we can reach more people who want to learn to glow alongside us. See you next time.